Good morning, dear students. Welcome back to our social science class. We were studying the chapter Our Constitution. So let us recall few points about our Constitution that we studied in yesterday's class. Who is the chief architect of Indian Constitution? The chief architect of Indian Constitution is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. When did our Constitution come into force? Our Constitution came into force on 26 January 1950 and we celebrate this day as Republic Day. Who is the President of the Constituent Assembly? The President of the Constituent Assembly is Dr. Rajendra Prasad. What is the law that governs the state? The law that governs the state is Constitution. Last class we studied about our Constitution. The Indian Constitution is the supreme law of India. The Indian Constitution was approved on 26 November 1949 and came into force on 26 January 1950. It lays down the framework defining fundamental political principles, establishes the structure, procedures and sets out fundamental rights, directive principles and the duties of a citizen. Our Constitution is the longest written constitution of any sovereign country in the world, containing 488 articles in 25 parts, 12 schedules, 5 appendices and 98 amendments. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is regarded as the father of Indian Constitution or the architect of Indian Constitution. The Constitution of India is federal in nature. Each state and each union territory have their own government. Why do we need the fundamental rights? The fundamental rights provide the social and political atmosphere necessary for the development of the personality of a citizen. They are required for a person to lead a civilized life in society. They are also essential for the success of a democracy. Our Constitution has 6 fundamental rights. They are right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, right to constitutional remedies. Now let's learn in detail each fundamental rights. The first fundamental right is right to equality. It refers to the equality in the eyes of law, disregarding any unfairness on grounds of caste, creed, race, religion, place of birth, sex. All human beings are born free and are equal in dignity and right. This right is very essential for the success of democracy. All citizens are equal socially and economically before the law. Under this law, untouchability is an offense. This right has enabled every citizen to get an equal opportunity to join government services. Now let's move on to right to freedom. What do you think is right to freedom? It is one of the important fundamental rights. Under the right, one who expresses his own opinion, to conduct meetings without arms, to establish organization, to live anywhere in India, to follow any profession, to move around in the country. It's a protective right also. No one can be arrested without proper reason. No state law can snatch the life and freedom of a citizen. Now let's move on to the third one, right against exploitation. The main aim of this right is to prevent exploitation of women, children, the poor and the weak. Begging, the Devdasi system, the practice of sati, immoral activities and forced labor have been prohibited. The employment of children under 14 years of age in mining, industries and other dangerous occupation is punishable under this law. Moving on to the fourth, right to freedom of religion. Since India is a secular country, no religion has been given the status of a national religion. Citizens can accept any religion that their conscience dictates, practices it and propagates it. No one can be forced to pay taxes for the management of religious institutions. Use of religious places for political and other activities have been prohibited in the country. The next one is cultural and educational rights. All citizens of the country have their own language, script, culture. It is a duty of the state to protect them. The right protects the interest of religion and linguistic minorities. No one can be denied admission in government-aided institution or institution run by minorities. The seventh right is right to constitutional remedies. What does this mean? The Constitution has not only given fundamental rights to the citizens of India but also guarantees them under the Article 32. Whenever the rights are violated, either by person or state government or the central government, the citizens may directly appeal to the Supreme Court for their protection. This law or this right is also called as the heart and soul of the Constitution. The Supreme Court is empowered to enforce the fundamental rights. Hence, it is called the protector of fundamental rights. Even the High Courts have the power to pass the following right under Article 226. Now let's move on to what is habeas corpus? The order that is passed by Supreme Court or High Court to produce a person within a specified time frame is called habeas corpus. This law protects the individual right of a person. What is mandamus? When the legislature, executive, or any other subordinate institutions fail to perform certain duties or works, the Supreme Court or the High Court orders them to perform other works. This order is called mandamus, but the order cannot be passed against private individual, governor, or president. What is prohibition? When a subordinate court passes a judgment beyond its jurisdiction or the judgment is against the sense of natural justice, the higher court pass order against such judgments. The order is called as prohibition. This can be passed against the lower court by a higher court. For example, when we fight a case in the High Court and the jurisdiction is not in our favor, we can appeal to the Supreme Court. Certiorari. What does this mean? It means the court or the Supreme Court orders the lower court to hand over the records like judgment that is passed, and this order is called as certiorari. What is co-warrant? The order directing the right person to occupy the right public office is called co-warrant. The order is passed against persons who hold public offices illegally by the higher courts. Public interest litigation can be filed in courts in order to protect the social rights denied to citizens and to protect public interest. Public interest litigation can be filed for the purpose of protecting legal rights that are essential to protect life and to protect environment from being polluted. These public interest litigation can be filed by individual or social institution. In recent years, we see that the court on their own are filing such public interest litigation when situation arrive. Now let's move on to fundamental duties. Rights and duties are two faces of the same coin. Rights without duties have no value or significance. 10 fundamental duties were included in Chapter 4. Part A, Article 51. With the 42nd Amendment of the Constitution, with 86th Amendment in 2002, there are now 11 fundamental duties. There are 11 fundamental duties, and they are: first one, to respect the Constitution, national flag and national anthem. Second, to follow the noble ideas that inspired our national struggle for freedom. Third, to protect the integrity of India. Fourth, to defend the motherland when called upon to do so. Fifth, to promote the spirit of common brotherhood amongst all the people of India and disown those rituals that go against the dignity of women. Sixth, to preserve our rich heritage. 7. To protect and develop environment including forests, lakes, rivers, wildlife and show compassion to animals. 8. To develop the scientific temper and the spirit of inquiry. 9. To safeguard public property and to obtain from violence. 10. To strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activities. 11. The parents or the guardian should provide an opportunity for education to their children from the age of 6 to 14 years. Now let's move on to the directive principles of state policy. This policy aims to establish a welfare state. Certain directive principles of state policy have been incorporated in the Constitution under the fourth part from 36 to 51 articles. These principles were served as guidelines to the state. The framers of our Constitution were inspired by the Irish Constitution to include such directive principles. These directive principles are in the form of direction to the central and state government. These directives are called as principles. They are as follows: to provide adequate means to livelihood to all citizens, to prevent the community, wealth and resources from becoming the private property of few people, to provide equal pay for equal work to both men and women and to protect labor welfare, to provide public assistance to those who are old, sick and weak, to implement uniform civil code throughout the country, to provide opportunities for the development of health and preschool education to all children below 6 years, to protect historical monuments and maintain places of historical interest, to separate the executive from judiciary, to protect the international peace and to respect international law, to establish gram panchayats, to encourage rural and cottage industries, to organize, develop agriculture and animal husbandry to modern, to ensure prohibition of liquor, to ensure development of farming based on scientific methods. The directive principles of state are important. They aim to achieve social welfare. The central and the state governments are making attempt to implement all the principles. These principles aim at holistic development in India. So students, in today's class we learned about fundamental rights, fundamental duties and the directive principle of state policy. Thank you students.